guys, I know you're fired up about these college football playoff rankings that were released last night. Mike, we're going to start with you. What's your one hot take on the initial rankings?
I'm not terribly surprised. I think that we knew that it was going to be heavy SEC, and I think that's what we're going to get. I think the real thing that's going to throw a wrench into everything is what's shaking out in the Big 12 right now, because you've got a couple of teams like Colorado, K-State, Iowa State, who now has a loss. I like almost all of those teams straight up in a rematch, for K-State's sake, against BYU in a potential title game. So if someone else in the Big 12 gets in as an at-large, that's going to squeeze things out for some of those group of 5 schools, because I don't see SEC teams getting left out here. And when you look at these particular standings, I think BYU is all but guaranteed to be in the title game. But again, I don't think there's some massive favorite over Iowa State, Colorado, or Kansas State. You look at the Big 12 every week, it seems like every game is a 2.5 to 3.5 point spread. That's where it's going to be. So if someone beats BYU in that title game, oh man, someone's going to be very frustrated when it comes to making the college football playoff.
I just really hate the non-brand name type of rankings that they did, because you have a BYU there that has played phenomenal football, has a win over SMU, and Indiana that's undefeated. And so you have those two teams. If they were named anything else, preferably a SEC team or a Big Ten team, they would a brand name Big team in terms of Indiana, they'd be in a college football playoff ranking. So because they're not brand names, despite what the on-field play has done or has been, those guys are not getting rewarded, and it's a shame.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. Now, Emory, one of your teams, and we're going to start with Mike on this one, Army. Mike, should they be ranked higher than 25th?
They should be ranked higher than 25th. I don't think that they should be a top 10 team, despite having the undefeated record, and they look great. The fact is they would still be 2 touchdown underdogs to almost every team there in the top 10. So the thing for me is, yes, they should be ranked higher. I say 18 to 20. Like anything above 20 is flat out disrespectful. I could get behind really anything between, say, 15 to 20, but 18 to 20 is that range where I've got it in the computer, which is an extremely respectable spot to be in college football. So I think that, yes, they're being disrespected. I would love to see them get in. I can't wait for that matchup with Notre Dame, but 25 is definitely too low for Army.
You got to reward winning. Look at that graphic that we just showed. Army's, their worst loss. That you can't find it because they're undefeated. So when you think about these teams like Indiana, BYU, Army, reward teams that haven't lost. I don't care who you play. It is hard to be undefeated. We see this every single week in college football. Army has done a great job just dominating the competition, playing whoever's on their schedule. They have another really good game this weekend against North Texas, a very underrated offense. So if it ties into my first point of if Army was, in the SEC, they would be ranked top 10. And I know people say, well, that's because they're playing the SEC schedule. They don't even want to rank Vanderbilt or South Carolina high because they don't have that brand name, despite them racking up some really good wins. So just reward winning. Army, Indiana, BYU should all be respected more.
Yeah, but Emory, hold on a second. Army hasn't played anybody. I mean, we just saw that graphic. Have they beaten a team that's going to go to a bowl game? Now, Notre Dame in a couple of weeks will be a big deal. But outside of that, I mean, this team has played literally nobody.
When they beat Notre Dame, people will say, well, I mean, Notre Dame really lost to Northern Illinois. The goalposts will constantly move and shift. So that's the whole point of the argument. You can't have it both ways.
Fair enough. All right, M squared. Let's talk about the SEC, as you alluded to earlier. With their current positioning, how many SEC teams can make the college football playoff?
3 is a bare minimum. They're getting 3 in no matter what. I think they can get 4. I want to lay out the nightmare scenario for everyone here. The nightmare scenario is Bama beats LSU this week at LSU. Ole Miss beats Georgia on their home field, and then next week Georgia turns around and beats Tennessee. If that happens, this is going to be a situation where we're putting 4 SEC teams in this college football playoff, and Ole Miss is going to be in the SEC title game. So I think this is going to be an absolutely fascinating week in the SEC. They're getting 3 for sure. I think it's more likely that they're ultimately going to get 4, though, because I think Ole Miss is a live dog this week, and I think Bama is primed to upset, if you want to call it that, LSU on the road in Death Valley. So I'm going to say 4 is what they get, bare minimum 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 3 because again, going back to the rankings, how they are positioned, they want to get 3 or 4 in because you notice the trend here. Oh, this team beat this team. They were ranked higher. Oh, we got to now. If Ole Miss beats Georgia, they're gonna fly Ole Miss up to number 3, put Georgia down to number 8, and then if LSU and Alabama, whoever wins that, gonna move up a little bit. You see how they just musical chairs to where they're gonna get 3 or 4 teams in, even though they are probably not deserving. Just because they play in the SEC, they're going to get that, that rubber stamp mark of this team is a good team despite having 5 losses. So I would say 3, and I'm with Mike. I also can see 4 making it if his scenario plays out perfectly.
Yeah, I can see 4 as well. It just depends. As you said, Ole Miss beating Georgia this week is a key to that, in my opinion. All right. And finally, Clemson, 23rd after that loss to Louisville. M Squared, you were at the game. Do they have a path to the college football playoff without making the ACC championship game?
I mean, there is a mathematical path, I would say, but I'm going to say no for the sake of the question here because I think we're getting those 4 SEC teams in. And ultimately, I think what's going to happen in the Big 12 is someone beats BYU. BYU gets the last spot. The Big 12 gets 2. So if you got 6 divided up between SEC and Big 12, we already know what the Big 10 looks like. I ultimately think it's whoever wins the ACC. And the ACC is going to be the conference that gets squeezed here. It's going to be one team from the ACC, in my opinion. So if they don't make that title game, I'm going to go ahead and say no. They have ruined their chances of a college football playoff.
Just no, I hate to sound like a broken record, but yes, there's a path. See name brand, and you follow the flow chart. If there's Clemson a name brand, yes, they will make the college football playoff regardless. So that's the thing. As long as they win and rack up some impressive wins, some style point type wins, this team will find a way to get into the postseason because the worst case doomsday scenario that I threw out there on CBS Sports HQ is to not have a lot of these brand names in the first iteration of this college football playoff. So Clemson, all you have to do is just remain with the name Clemson, and you'll be able to get into the postseason.